Hey, what's up you guys? Bloody Jacob here, and yes, we have another action movie, QMR. Today we're going to be talking about Conan the Destroyer, as well as Above the Law and Blackjack. Yes, yeah, nice little mix in today of a 80s, fantasy action adventure epic starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. You have Above the Law being Steven Seagal's, entrance into cinema. And then you have Blackjack, John Woo directed Dolph Lundgren film that was actually intended as a backdoor for a series.
Jacob here, meeting my icon, Catherine Isabel here.
And first, we're going to be talking about Above the Law. Now, Above the Law is about a former Special Operations Vietnam vet who works as a Chicago cop, and he uncovers a CIA wrongdoing. And that is, once again, IMDb's sum up of that. Google has a little bit more of an elaborate one. A martial arts expert and former CIA agent Nico Toscani is working as a Chicago cop on a relatively routine drug trafficking investigation leads to an international conspiracy. Soon, Nico and his partner Dolores Jackson Pam Grier are the targets of mysterious and powerful criminals, but he refuses to back down. As Nico gets deeper into the case, he must contend with an old adversary, corrupt CIA operative Kurt Sagan, Henry Silva. Now, yes, I've been on a bit of a Steven Seagal kick lately, and it's funny. Above the Law isn't the first one I've seen. You guys know I've watched Mark for Duff lately, Out for Justice, even something like Submerged, and things like that. But I actually had just picked up the Blu-ray of the film. Wait, what's this? We're not supposed to talk about this yet. But yeah, I just picked up the Blu-ray of the film. Got it for about $5. So I thought that was as good of a time as any. And this is another one of those Steven Seagal movies that are actually fairly well regarded in terms of genre fans. Along with ones like Out for Justice, Marked for Death, Hard to Kill, things like that. Also gotta get to On Deadly Ground soon. Of course, Henry Silva is the villain in this, and he just has one of those looks. He can never play a good guy. He just has like that naturally evil face. Probably both the good and bad for him. I actually like the opening we see with Toscani in the war and stuff like that. This is probably one of Steven Seagal's better performances, I think. You still have like your Steven Seagal sort of snarkiness and things like that in the movie. But he feels a little bit more restrained. He feels like he's really actually trying to give a competent sort of portrayal of this guy in the movie. Which is a good thing. And it does have that sort of classic action movie feel to it. I mean, from the music to how it's paced. It is paced fairly well, by the way. I'll give it that. You also have Sharon Stone in this as his wife, who really isn't in it much. She's basically there to worry and to, cry and things like that. But, she is one of the better performances in the movie as well. And it's odd, because this is also before Steven Seagal had anything done to his hair. You can see his receding hairline, actually almost balding in the front. At some point after this, though, he had something done, whether it's, I don't know exactly. But it's a little odd. That's his first movie, and already looks like that. Then he had something done, a few years later, and then looks somehow more filled in, right? But anyway, that's not the point of this review. He does bleed a little bit in this. He actually lets himself get hit, but only when his character is briefly tied to a chair and interrogated and such like that. This is also one of, if not the first time that Aikido is featured in a movie, especially like a mainstream movie like this. And there's some fun fight scenes in it. He's not really opposed in this movie. It's rare when you see a Steven Seagal movie and he actually has to put in some effort to get through these guys. It's mostly just dopey or sort of impulsive criminals that run at him and such. But there's a pretty fun chase sequence in it too that you see gifs of all the time. He does this signature sort of weird run type of thing. It's funny when you see the one guy scream when Seagal chases after him and eventually catches up to him. That's one of the fights in the alleyway, actually. But then he has this relationship with local pastor and stuff like that. It's actually pretty decent, and it's a little over an hour and a half. It's almost an hour and 40. Like I said, it is paced pretty well. There's some enjoyable bits. I also liked his dynamic with his partner, Jax, played by Pam Grier. I actually could have taken a whole movie just about them too. Overall, I think Above the Law was, I can see why it worked and sort of launched that period in Steven Seagal's career that was, fairly successful. And this is definitely one of his more competent performances where you can see he did put in a little bit of effort to it. And he's entertaining when he's on screen, despite his hairline. You could tell, how audiences first latched onto him in a way, at least for a few years. So if I had to rate Steven Seagal, if I had to rate Above the Law, I don't think it's my personal favorite. I don't think it's absolutely incredible or excellent necessarily. But it's maybe above what you'd expect from first entry from Steven Seagal. So I'm giving it around like an 84, 86% somewhere in there. I think it's solid enough. It doesn't have as memorable of a fight as something like Marked for Death. It doesn't have something as memorable of a fight scene like in Out for Justice in the bar. Although how he finally kills the main bad guy is brutal. It's one of those where it feels kind of quick, like Under Siege was. Oh, that was a cool move, how he killed that guy, but wait, that's it. But yeah, overall, I liked it. I liked it well enough. And then we're going to be talking about, at least for a couple minutes here, Blackjack, starring Dolph Lundgren. And you guys know I'm a big fan of Dolph Lundgren. It's funny, someone who had, I forget if it had to do with Submerged or something like that. I think it was one of the producers or writers or directors or something like that. They had worked with both Seagal and Lundgren, and, of course, Seagal tries to go and micromanage and change everything to his personal liking, whereas he said Lundgren, was a true pro and a real gentleman. Lundgren's one of the best guys in the genre, and I love a lot of his films, even when he's in a meh film. It still kind of works in a way just because of Dolph's presence. And Blackjack, yes, it was intended as a backdoor pilot to a TV show, and you can definitely tell. It was directed by John Woo, who's known for directing a lot of, some pretty stellar or at least solid action movies around that time. He even directed, Van Damme and Hard Target and things like that. But yeah, like I said, you can definitely tell it was meant to be a TV show. And I don't know, I watched it quite a while ago, and I'm just getting to it now. Something's really kind of clunky about the choreography in this movie. I mean, maybe one of the best scenes of the whole movie is where he just takes out these two guards when he, during the character's kind of first intro scene, and it just feels very staged and set up. And then some of the lines, some of the dialogue, it feels very kind of forced, a little hammy, kind of going for that Texas, Walker Texas Ranger vibe, but not quite as well. And Dolph, I like him, he's likable in this movie, but even his delivery sometimes it feels kind of artificial. which is unfortunate. And it was directed by John Woo, and it's not particularly terribly directed, but at the same time, you don't really see anything like unique about how it's filmed either, which is unfortunate. Now the main bad guy in this, the killer. Trying to find his name, if at all possible. I don't know, I can't find his name for sure right now. It's been some time since I've seen it. He's not bad. I mean, he acts as like a decent, imposing foil to Lundgren in this, and I didn't mind him. And they're trying to play on this trauma that Dolph's character is wary of the color white, which kind of turns into like a slightly silly finale. I don't know. I did like his dynamic with the little girl. He's trying to protect in this movie. I thought that was actually the best part of it. But besides that, I can see why I didn't get the green light, or at least why I wasn't financially successful enough to launch a show. But I still love Dolph Lundgren. I just think this one was pretty underwhelming. I know there are some within the Action Elite group that actually do hold this one at a decent regard, but for me, I don't know, I just didn't really see much in it. Maybe that's just me, but apparently not. So yeah, and lastly, but certainly not least, we're going to be talking about Conan the Destroyer, yes, from 1984, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. And once again, I feel like a broken record saying this, but Arnold Schwarzenegger has always been my favorite action hero since I was a little kid. To this day, he's still one of my all-time favorite actors in general. He's been a hero of mine since I was a kid. And I've always meant to revisit the Conan films. I haven't done a video on The Barbarian yet, the first one, which I will at some point. I think I plan on rewatching the remake with Jason Momoa as well. Then maybe we'll do a ranking, maybe including Red Sonja or something. But I watched The Barbarian years ago, on TV late at night, and I was happy to finally revisit the sequel, Conan the Destroyer. And yes, here's the Blu-ray I got of that as well. Now, this one had some production issues as well. Arnold Schwarzenegger and one of the other guys behind the first one were wanting to maintain its serious tone, but I think it was a studio that thought, oh hey, why don't we make it a little bit lighter, a little more, comical, make it more like a, the comic books it's based on or something like that. It'll make more money, it'll be more accessible that way. Schwarzenegger didn't really care for that, and that's why he kind of drifted off after this one with the character. He does essentially appear as the character in Red Sonja, although they use another name for Conan in it. But, so, it kind of leaves a weird taste in your mouth knowing that and the issues Arnold had with it. But, honestly, if I'm being completely truthful here, I had a lot of fun with Conan the Destroyer. It's been quite a few years since I've seen the first one, so I will probably have to rewatch it. But this one is a little bit more entertaining in a broad sense than I think The Barbarian was. It was rated PG, but keep in mind at the time PG was also there for something that could have been easily rated PG-13, which they hadn't created yet. So yeah, you see this PG-13 movie, and there is blood, and there's a couple decapitations and such, but yeah, totally PG. But I guess that was different then. So, that kind of thing's funny when you go back and watch some of these older films. And you also have Grace Jones in this as Zula, the sort of a warrior, warrior-esque type of character. And you can tell her and Arnold Schwarzenegger had a lot of fun on set. There are some really fun, behind-the-scenes photos you can look up of the movie as well. And of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger is just completely perfect as this character. When they first cast him as the Barbarian, he was apparently the only guy they had in mind for, and you can definitely tell why. He carries himself so well with that kind of demeanor. And yes, I'm not sure, I'm guessing he kept it for the Destroyer as well, but I know with the Barbarian, it was actually Arnold's real hair. He was so eager to play the role that he actually had grown it out. That's why I see Arnold in some of those really early 80s photos, where he has that kind of slightly thicker, curlier hair. But he's great in this as well. You also have Wilt Chamberlain as Bombetta. You had, Sarah Douglas actually as Queen Taramis. And let's see. Yep, okay. Yeah, so he had a nice cast with this. He also, I gotta mention, he had Andre the Giant appearing as one of these creatures that are released at the end of the movie. I guess it was unnatural for Arnold Schwarzenegger to be in a movie and have so many scenes with the guys that are actually bigger than him, at least from a height standpoint. And there's some fun behind the scenes photos you can look up of that. Especially if you're a fan of wrestling, it's kind of nice to see these photos of Andre and everything. You don't actually see Andre's face, but he did a lot of little TV appearances, and he had a couple of film appearances like that, in the 80s and 90s. So that was nice to know as well. And there's a good dose of humor to it. It does have a bit more of a levity quality to it than the previous film. There's kind of a fun little scene where Conan's a little drunk. And of course he's led on his quest by the Queen, played by Sarah Douglas, as a way to bring back the woman he had lost in the previous entry. And so there's a bit of a serious touch to it, but he's drunkenly kind of playing that a little bit in a certain scene, and it was quite fun. And it's funny to call Arnold Schwarzenegger small compared to those other guys, because then you have shots like this, towards the climax of the movie as well, and you can just see how, huge Arnold really was at the time. And there's some fun fight scenes in this as well. Again, there's a cheese factor to it. It doesn't look as good as it would now, maybe, at some of the fights. But you can still tell and feel the power behind some of Conan's hits and his swings with his sword and everything like that. And I do actually have a little bit of blood in it periodically, so that was enjoyable as well. And he has a couple of good struggles with certain creatures in the movies as well. And you can tell it's not quite there, but the main monster that Andre played at the end, actually, I think it looked fairly good from a practical effects standpoint, which is cool. And I also love the music. It's kind of like classical fantasy epic type of thing that you may have heard before, but I think it worked for it. I enjoyed that aspect of it as well. And if I had to rate Conan the Destroyer, it turns into like a group, sort of adventure movie, but I think it works. If I had to rate it, I'm giving it 89-90% right in there. Tilting on B+, A. So, yeah, let me guys thought about Conan the Destroyer, as well as the rest of the films I talked about here, both Blackjack and Above the Law. What's your favorite of the Conan films? Do you want them to do that Legend of Conan movie? I definitely do, but there's some weird, messed up rights issues with it which are holding it back, even though Arnold is interested. Doing a movie that takes place years from now. Years from the end of the other Conan movies and such. So yeah, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, like, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.